This is the draft season podcast. We are back with another installment of our 2023 NBA team preview series. And on today's video, we will be discussing none other than the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and them boys. We have a very special guest, friend of the show, Jackson Lloyd. You can follow him on Twitter, Jackson Lloyd NBA. Look below. Follow him on Twitter. Jackson, appreciate you popping on the pod. I know it's off season. We getting back into the swing of NBA things. How you doing, my guy?
I'm doing great. To be honest, for me, it just happened so quickly. I'm not really as big into baseball anymore, but I start gearing up for football just as like a casual fan. And then boom, basketball happens, and like that Labor Day going right into media day, and then now there'll be games next week. So I'm really excited. It's kind of like over the next 6 to 8 months or whatever it is. It's basically my life. So I'm pumped.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, Raz, my guy, Philadelphia 76ers. We are talking about, like I said, we're talking about the Sixers today. And they're approaching a very interesting season just in terms of obviously the Ben Simmons saga has been put to rest. James Harden said that he lost 100 pounds today at media day. I don't know.
Slim Jim.
I don't know. I don't know how accurate that is, but he definitely was looking quite hefty last season, and you could tell just about whether it was finishing around the basket, just lift on his jump shot. Like you could tell he was not in optimal shape last season. But coming into this season, he looks motivated, and we're talking about a future, obviously NBA 75, future Hall of Famer, one of the best offensive players of his generation. So a motivated James Harden on this team is, could do a lot for a team who has already been hovering around the 50 game plateau for this season. Now, Raz, let's just do real quick of the, all season preview. Who's in, who's out on the Sixers real quick.
So obviously we said, Harden re-signed. PJ Tucker is a great pickup for this team. Add a little veteran leadership, some grit, some toughness, a 3-point shooter for those guys to run with. DeAnthony Melton traded from the Grizzlies. Probably my favorite pickup for them. I think he's somebody who's going to obviously come in and be that third to fourth ball handler that they need. Able to be that spark plug off the bench, really go get a bucket and kind of run the offense in spurts. Daniel House, the bubble bandit is reunited with James Harden. Daniel House really lost his marriage in the bubble, but shout out to the bubble, some of our best, that was the inception of the draft season podcast. So shout out to Daniel House, good times. Trevlin Queen was also signed. Michael Foster also signed. Montrezl Harrell, another big pickup for this team, adds grit. A backup big for Embiid, kind of slow down some of those minutes as you get into the playoffs for him, so you can kind of keep Embiid a little fresher. They'll be able to not lose anything in rim protection and rebounding there. And then St. John's own, your man's, Sean, also signed there. Julian Champagny, a bucket as we've watched him in Queens out here. Hopefully he's able to stick with this team. Obviously, Danny Green, the corpse of Danny Green, Long Island is great. Is in Memphis. So we'll see what happens to him. DeAndre Jordan, huh?
Is he on the roster? He's on Memphis, right?
Yeah, he's on the Memphis. I said the corpse of him is on.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah. So we'll see what he got, and then DeAndre Jordan, still collecting checks. So shout out to him. He's out there in Denver backing up Jokic, and Miles Powell going getting that bag in China. So shout out to him.
So Jackson, we'll start with you. Obviously, last season, this team, faltered in the second round. But just what are your I think this team had a great offseason. I feel like this is probably the deepest team around Embiid. I feel like they have all of the pieces that they do really need to make a deep run. But just your thoughts and your general feelings on the offseason and this roster coming in as you look at it.
If Harden is who I say he is, this is going to be a championship contender, and this is probably a top 2 roster for both Harden and Embiid in their career. I'll say top 3 roster for Harden, just depending on some of the Houston teams are really good. But I think that first of all, Harden having the offseason is going to be huge. There's that coaches saying like practice hours, the team gets better and you get better after practice. And when you're not able to play pickup or do the same conditioning regimen to improve yourself, it's going to kind of come to the surface when you're playing games every other night. Like 2 of his best stretches of the season were after COVID and after the trade when he took 2 weeks off or whatever it was. But they had a sneaky good offseason. I'm actually kind of surprised that Twitter as a whole isn't really higher on it, because I feel like Melton and Tucker, those are kind of players that Twitter eats up. But I think it's just kind of the sour taste in people's mouths for some of the flameouts for Embiid and Harden. I mean, I try not to get too worked up by that, because in my opinion, Embiid's either been injured or had a incapable roster for the bulk of his career. I mean, I think Ben Simmons has become really underrated, but at the same time, like he missed the bubble series against the Celtics. Obviously, he didn't play up to standard against the Hawks. So this roster, it's easy to talk yourself into stuff like they're finally going to be good with Embiid on the bench. Like, we'll see with stuff like that, because history has shown us they get smoked when he's not playing, at least in the playoffs. But just a really deep team, top to bottom. And there's a couple storylines like which, if any of the young guys are going to stick between like Reed and Bassey, Isaiah Joe, etc. Like, will any of those guys play a role, or is it going to continue to be guys like Harrell and Korkmaz and Thibault, who I think Thibault will give them good minutes, but we'll see how much that carries over to the postseason.
I mean, I think B-Ball Paul, somebody that has to have a future on this team, obviously. Montrez kind of cuts into those minutes, but I mean, he showed in stretches last year, especially during the playoffs, that he can help this team. So, I mean, I like you said, this roster's deep, and we're talking about him being the third center on this team. I think that's just incredible, and kind of shows you what the GM and the front office has done with this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, Raz, to stay with you for a second at least, just about this team, because like, we talk about strengths and weaknesses on this team. What do you think is, like, if there's any type of weakness? I think we're all like I said, we're all fans of this team, of the offseason that they did have, and I think, like I said, I think Eastern Conference Finals at worst, anything less probably would be a massive disappointment, just for the level of talent that this team has, especially with. Like, obviously, so the over-under for this team this year is 50.5 wins, and they won 51 games last season. It was the 4th seed in the East. But like, what do you see as like possible weaknesses for this team?
I mean, looking at it on paper, I think every team can obviously probably add more shooting, unless you're, the fucking Warriors. But maybe some actual, legitimate knockdown shooters, and then health. Realistically, I mean, I think health is the only thing that is kind of standing in the way of this team. You need to keep Joel Embiid healthy. That's obviously very integral, and I mean that's a moot point. We shouldn't even have to state that, but just health with him, how hard and hamstring will react to this season, and if those two are 100%, like, this team has very little weaknesses other than maybe in the starting lineup initially, probably some perimeter defense.
Yeah, I feel like just talking about this Sixers team in general, and working on some projects for the page. Had me really diving into some Tyrese Maxey from last year, and I just thinking about it out loud, going back and watching what he did, not only in the playoffs as a 21-year-old in his first real extended minutes. Obviously, he didn't really play much in year one, didn't even break 1,000 minutes. So obviously he was a part-time player in year one, and like we just spoke about, like, this team, and like you did say, Jackson, because I'm definitely on you. We spoke about this on the Nets preview, talking about Ben Simmons, about how, like, just what he does. There's not a lot of guys in the league that does what he does, that are capable of impacting the ball. I mean, impacting the game on both sides. Even if he can't shoot, he's still creating threes for teammates, and has all defense level of production on defense. But the real reason why like aside from the circus that followed Ben Simmons last year, but like that team never missed Ben. And a part of that reason is because of how damn good Tyrese Maxey was last season. I think when we talk about that 2020 draft was it was heavily criticized about not being a great draft, about not having, not being deep. Everybody said the 2021 draft was superior, which, this probably is, but it's still a debate at least, especially because you have this guy's at the top of that. You have Ant, you have Melo. Halliburton has definitely surpassed all possible expectations for him, even last year if you were high on Halliburton, but he was incredible. Even on the Kings and even after the trade. But Tyrese Maxey was incredible. Like I like just thinking about what we might get from him in year 3. Like Harden for whatever. I don't know if we're gonna get peak Harden this year. And at what is Harden? 33 years old at this point? 32?
Yeah, I think he just turned 33 like a month ago.
33. Like there's a lot of miles on that body. Obviously Embiid. We know Embiid is still a prime. He's been a top 3-4 player in the league the last couple years. So the floor for this team is extremely high. But like even going back to that draft class, like Tyrese Maxey had no right falling to 21st, I believe he fell to in that draft. And like even taking a look at what he did last season, his numbers, his 3-point shooting numbers, he was one of the most efficient 3-point shooters just in terms of like combo guards last season. Looking at it right now, Cleaning the Glass had him in the 95 percentile on all 3-pointers. He shot 44% last year on 297 threes last year. He was extremely good. The first step is incredible. Even finished really good at the rim. So I mean, what are your guys' expectations for a guy like Tyrese Maxey in year 3? Because like I think people know how good he is, because obviously he was incredible in that Raptors series. The Raptors have a bunch of really good wing defenders, and Maxey was just doing whatever he wanted in that series. Like even like Fred VanVleet for the minutes that he was on the court, when he was matched up on Maxey, he was kind of like he couldn't do much with Maxey in that series, and it was kind of obvious. So I mean, I'm like, even as somebody who like I see, like I'm a little skeptical about going all in. I'm not as earnest about it as maybe Raz, you or Jackson about just the expectations for the team this year. But like, what's your guys' expectations about just Jackson, at least I'll go to you on this. From when Harden went into Philadelphia and the synergy that he had, just the chemistry that you saw from the Maxey Harden backcourt, and how high do you think this backcourt could be in terms of when we start talking about the best backcourts in the league? Because if Maxey takes a year 3 leap, like he's not far off from a max player. Like if the Sixers, the cap sheet is going to be, it's going to be like they have to pay guys a lot. The cap sheet's not going to be pretty. They're definitely going to be a luxury tax team. But if Tyrese Maxey takes another leap in year 3, going into when he's going to be rookie contract eligible, like I said, we might be talking about a max player. So what are your expectations for that Maxey Harden backcourt, and how high in the upper echelon of backcourts do you think they can get?
I think they could rank really high amongst the backcourts in the league. It's pretty crazy what Maxey, quote unquote, breaking out has done for them, because he's making less than $2 million, if I'm not mistaken, this year. So everyone always talks about, the value contracts and just getting that production on a rookie deal. I know it's beating a dead horse, but that's just so much for their outlook. If they didn't have him, just think of how the Simmons saga playing out, how it did, would kind of be perceived, and just how they would look. Like, as crazy as it sounds, is Joel Embiid on the team? If they don't draft Tyrese Maxey now, that's kind of the extreme outlook. But at a certain point, players will say, like, look around and say this isn't enough. But the team, I was looking at the Vegas total, and I'm kind of stuck between that's pretty low and that's just about right, because I think that they're going to be a much better team than 50. You said it was 50.5, right?
Yeah, 50.5.
So yeah, I'd probably say that them and the Bucks and Boston are probably the 3 teams that I'm viewing as pretty good chances to get 50 wins. I'm probably omitting somebody. I'm sure that Cleveland fans will state their case, and Toronto fans will state their case. And there's a lot of just, top to bottom in the East. I think it's gotten better to where it used to be the 6, 7, 8 seeds were roadkill. Now I don't necessarily view it that way. For example, last year, the Philadelphia and Toronto 4-5 series, it was supposed to be a closer series than it was. I mean, it ended up going 6 games still, but with the older roster, it'll be interesting to see how they handle resting on back-to-backs. I think that they're going to be really, really cautious with Harden and Tucker probably. And I think that Embiid's going to go hard for MVP. I think he's going to play up to not really caring about the award. But I think part of him is just kind of driven and saying that he's been top 2 the past 2 seasons in voting. And really, Jokic was a deserving winner, but from Embiid's perspective, he's probably thinking, I didn't even have a chance at the award, just the way the voting shook out. But it's an interesting team because I was looking at kind of their overall standing in the league on both ends, and you can't convince me this isn't a top 3 to 5 offense. And I think that they're going to be adequate defensively. I think some of the perimeter defense issues will be bigger in the playoffs, but in the regular season, I just think that night to night, the motor of Embiid isn't always going to be full go defensively, especially with how much he has to do on offense. But they got guys like Thibault, Maxey. I think he's fine on kind of quicker guards, and obviously Harden can switch up a bit. Obviously not going to contain the ball on the perimeter like a all-world defender or anything like that. But I just I think getting a guy like PJ Tucker with some tack and tenacity will help. I think Tobias Harris is fine at what he does, kind of on those combo forward types. Like if he's guarding a Harrison Barnes or a Bogdanovich or insert player X, I think he'll do fine. There were times where I thought that he did a pretty good job on like Siakam and Anunoby in the playoffs. I think a lot of the buckets Siakam had as the series went on were forcing a switch or forcing a hedge from Maxey, and then they eventually started playing those pick and rolls much more aggressively. So to be honest, I'm pretty confident in this team. I think that even a reduced version of Harden, they'll still be really good. I think that to win a title, though, they do need kind of the best version of Harden, maybe even a leap from Maxey. And above all else, health. I know that I saw PJ Tucker had a arthroscopic procedure earlier in the offseason, and he kind of feels like inevitable. Like he'll never be a trash player, but he's really old in NBA years, and he's played he's grinded for a lot of minutes and been on a lot of contending teams and basically done the dirty work for every single team he's been on. So we'll see how they hold up, but I would show some caution if I was like a gambling man. I don't really gamble because I just lose money when I do, but the 50.5 over under seems pretty reasonable, but I tend to think that they should be in the 53, 54 win range if this is the team they have and they're healthy and kind of firing on all cylinders.
I'm glad you brought it up because PJ Tucker was in that 2006 NBA draft. Right?
Yeah, that was like the Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge draft, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, do you know who's the active players from that draft left, Raz? Like, still out here? There's a couple. LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yeah, I was gonna say LaMarcus. Who the hell else was in that draft?
Was in there. He just I don't think
Millsap.
Russell. I think he's
Millsap shouldn't be on. He shouldn't be on a roster.
Lowry's in that draft, right?
Lowry is in that draft.
I think Lowry's the only one.
Is that the Bargnani draft?
Yep.
Fuck. So that's Redick. Now Rudy Gay's still in the league.
Rudy Gay's still in the league.
Yeah, Rudy Gay.
After or before, one of those. But I think just thinking about this team in general, and I think you hit on actually like the biggest point of contention about just this team and where they might be at fault. And it's not necessarily to say, because I do think the addition of Anthony Melton is incredible. I've always loved him. Huge part of that.
Oh, crap. Can I say something? Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
No, I just kind of drawing this parallel. It's not perfect, but I just think that Morey is the type of guy, he tries to recreate something if he believes in it or think it'll work. And I think that what he sees in Maxey. He wanted to be with Ty Lawson when he traded for him from the Nuggets to the Rockets like 8 years ago. I think that was the 15-16 season, if I remember correctly. But, that kind of dynamic with Harden and Maxey where they're contrasting styles. And then Patrick Beverley, not exactly the same as Melton, but very similar to where, they're kind of considered point guards, but I consider them more off guards. And, they can handle the ball a little bit, but they're not going to be doing too much initiation. They can guard kind of 1 to 3, 1 to 2, and they can upsize and switch if need be. But I think that there's just some similarities that I think Morey is kind of repeating with some of his teams. Obviously, bringing back Tucker and Daniel House. I don't know. To be honest, Philadelphia, they did a good job recruiting these guys. I know that Daniel House isn't gonna light the world on fire, but I would say last postseason, he did pretty well defensively in comparison to some other guys in the backcourt. Even for someone like Mike Conley, who had a defensive reputation, I think he really showed his age. And Daniel House had a good postseason. I know it's tough when you're facing the Mavs, and I'm not saying that Daniel House is going to be playing 35 minutes on a finals team, but I think just having a guy like that to where they were last season where they needed to rely on Thibault and Korkmaz every night, I think that there's kind of there's a chance that they don't need to do that, because when Danny Green went down in Game 6, I remember thinking to myself, this is just a huge injury. They need his shooting. They need his just ability to play the 2 or the 3 off the bench. Or I can't remember. He actually got put in the starting lineup for the playoffs. But, yeah, you guys get my point. Sorry to carry on this.
It's cool, right? He brought up Ty Lawson. Yeah, that was before the Hennessy XO got our brother Ty Lawson.
No. We're not gonna disrespect that. That
Ty
wasn't
Lawson
XO.
was good before. I think he had some personal issues, but he was really good for 3 or 4 years.
He was drinking E&J or that Douce.
That Paul Masai. But getting back to the just the Sixers. Like I said, I think the main, and I think just to talk about a little bit about lineup combinations, because this team, I don't even think we mentioned George Niang. He was a pretty good role player for them last year.
We'll just get the shots up. That's huge for that team.
I think, like I said, I think some of the I don't think this team has enough shooters to where it's not going to be it's not enough guys that you could just completely and I like Thibault. I thought Thibault, I was a fan of Thibault at Washington.
No, he's a good player. I just think the specific playoff matchups they've gotten into have been able to capitalize kind of against his weaknesses. Him not being in the road games in Toronto was obviously that hinders the team. And then with him being, the Miami matchup, I just think the way that they communicate and rotate and they can send early or late help off guys. And I think that really just puts Thibault in an awkward spot where he's a great cutter, but Harden's a player who's going to drive to the rim, and Embiid's a player who's going to operate kind of the elbow extended into the low block. So play the face-up game, and then you have to be really opportunistic with your cuts. And I feel like he kind of got, lost in the shuffle, and rightfully so. I don't think he had a very good playoffs, but continue.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, the Thibault thing, I think sometimes when we talk about I feel like he was just one of the intelligentsia, the NBA Twitter's favorite role players. And I think they just kind of ignored some of the flaws that you kind of did mention, just about being a complete zero on offense. Even if you're one of the best defenders, it's gonna have situational issues, especially in a playoff series. So I think like you mentioned to the best point, just about the type of players or the type of guards that they might struggle with. And it might be if there's an issue on this team, like I said, I think PJ Tucker, he's able to guard. He's a great forward defender. I think at this point in his career, just in terms of foot speed, do you really want him guarding a lot of the quicker guards? Probably not. He can, he can survive and he can play in a switch based scheme, but especially when he excelled even on the Heat and even on that Bucks team, and even in the past, at this point in his career, you probably do want him. Even he might. I don't know. Did you said Harrell was the third big? I think the backup, or you said Harrell was the third center on his team.
And I think he's the second.
No, I think Harrell's going to be the backup. Paul Reed's probably the third big.
Yeah, and PJ's going to get minutes. probably at the backup 5 when necessary.
Yeah.
Certain lineups, but yeah, I think like quick guards, especially in terms of just Maxey and Harden. Like you said, I don't think Maxey is a bad defender, but I think he's also not the biggest guy. So whether it's firing through screens or some of the bulkier lead guards in the league might be able to take advantage of him. And yeah, you like Harden still is somebody who you need to probably put on an off-ball guard. I mean, or just like an off-ball wing guy that you could probably hide him on better. So I mean, Raz, and then we'll get you back in here as well, Jackson. Just in terms of lineup combinations, like what do you think is going to be like the best lineup combinations for this team? Obviously, you're going to have Harden, you're going to have Maxey on the court. You're also going to be able to have Embiid on the court for at least 35 to 37 minutes a game. So that's going to give you a pretty strong base as a team. But dependent on matchup, what do you just see in terms of like Doc Rivers? We've seen him have some issues in the past, like playing the chess game mid-series about finding the right the right matchups in the right series. But you have guys like I think finding the right spots for Thibault, Melton in those lineups, whether it's the Harden by himself, whether Harden's going to be running the second unit by himself, letting Embiid kind of get his early play with Maxey. How do you see these matchups or the lineups and rotations, and even getting a little bit into what's the best closing lineup? Because I think even with a guy like Tobias Harris, who is making $37 million this year and is the highest paid player on this team, and I think he's for all the flack that Tobias Harris gets, he's a really good player, and he's not obviously a $37 million player, but he's a good defender, and he can help you in a lot of situations. But how do you see that matchup based rotation going about just in terms of whether it's perimeter based or just getting more shooting on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the Sixers have what we call a good problem. Depending on who you ask, right? If you're dependent on fucking Doc Rivers to make these adjustments, you might be in trouble. But I think just on paper, these are good problems to have. And I think closing, we always look to the closing lineup. It's going to be Maxey on the court. Harden's going to be on the court. Embiid's going to be on the court. Tobias Harris is too good to take off the court. So at this point now, it depends on if you're playing a team that has a little bit more size or the perimeter heavy. Because PJ Tucker, I mean, you could hope that Tobias can still guard threes, but is that really where you want him guarding in crunch time? He can, but I don't know if I want him guarding.
You probably don't want. I mean, PJ Tucker can too, but I think Tobias probably has more foot speed to guard maybe a little bit of the quicker threes than you probably want. PJ doing all the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it then comes down to between Daniel House and like Thibault, who's playing the best. I think they both give you good options in terms of wing defenders. Daniel House is obviously the better shooter. So if he's at his A game, you may end up closing with somebody like him just because you know what you're going to get, especially with that Harden kind of synergy that they have. That should be able to work pretty well. But there's also this offense also has the ability to go with three guards. And if you're out there with Melton, Maxey, and Harden, and you go Harris and Embiid, for example, like that's a very explosive offensive team. And if it's a running gun kind of game, that is a lineup that could give some teams some fits as well.
How do you kind of see that playing out, Jackson?
I think that their most used closing lineup will probably be the assumed starters. And I also think that all of House, Thibault, and Melton will get a chance to mix in there at the end of games. I don't know. I think that the top three guys are pretty secure. I do think that they would consider playing around with that last spot or two in the starting lineup, at least in extreme matchups. Like, for example, if you're facing a team like Cleveland, let's just say I don't know if it's a second round series or maybe it's a 4-5 series, who knows, but where they kind of have two really quick guards, like really, really quick guards. Garland's not a guy that you would think of as having like explosive kind of first step and getting to the rim, but just his ability to probe and attack and get into the lane. I think that'd be a really tricky matchup for the current iteration of the 76ers, just containing the ball, keeping it in front, and they'd kind of get put in rotation a ton. So how would they go against that? Would they play someone like Melton more, or would they just, if their starters are so dominant, like if they have like 1,000 minutes with their big top 3, top 4 players, I think that they would be the type of team that they're just going to ride those guys into the ground. But if there's like very specific combinations, at least with some of the bench units, I think that they would lean on certain lineups or certain combinations. Like, say, for example, if Harden and Melton as a 2-man lineup combo, if they're just playing so well and it's like something you can rely on a nightly basis, it wouldn't shock me that in the right matchup, they would close with Melton, maybe instead of PJ Tucker. Or if Daniel House, who I think the underrated aspect of signing Daniel House is the 2 best transition players last year for Philadelphia, at least on runouts, were Maxey and Thibault. And then they basically had nobody else who could move in transition at all. They were a very old, sluggish team. So unless Danny Green was locating for a 3 or Harden made a hit ahead, or maybe Embiid got out on a run out just kind of coming through the lane, they really didn't have much in transition. So he could give them something there. I don't know. I think this is a team that I feel like they have questions, but I think at the same time we know what they're going to try and do. And if it differentiates from that to an extreme extent, I think that means that something went wrong, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's I probably would agree with you on that. I think just like wrapping up on these guys, just talk about a couple of the back.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to make one point. Did Raz make the point about Niang like firing away on live, or was that before we started recording?
I think I said that. But yeah, go ahead.
Sean said that, I think.
Really? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's cool.
I thought that was Raz, but no, that'll be something to watch with this team. They don't really have too many players that just fire, or at least last season they didn't. Now they have a guy with familiarity with Harden and Tucker who he can only do anything from the corner, and I guess sometimes he'll hit one of those push shots from like 8 feet. But just having that guy for the spacing, and he's gonna get left open. Teams will rotate off him on drives, but there are worse. There's many worse shots than a 40% corner 3, and just having a guy like Tucker who's going to get those shots up. Niang, obviously, he's going to be hit or miss at times, but he gets the shots up. Korkmaz was supposed to be a player who could do that, but oddly enough, just had one of those streaky shooting seasons last year. I think for some of those end of the bench guys, though, you just get into like a 2-week slump, a 1-month slump. Like your season-long percentages are going to be kind of fucked no matter how well you shoot for the remainder of the year, just because of how little you're playing. It's kind of like that dynamic where if you're a role player in a playoff game and you have a bad first 4 to 6 minute stint, your coach might not put you back in the rest of the series, and then you're going to get blamed for it. It's kind of the life of being those end of bench guys in the league. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked with the roster. I think that it's a really good team. I think it'll be really fun. And I think that if there's something like alarmingly different about the 76ers, it's either injury related, Harden not performing to where he needs to be, or something kind of catastrophic, because I think that this is one of those teams that you look at and you know exactly what they're going to get from their top 4 to 6 guys, at least through Tucker and maybe Melton.
On the Korkmaz things, I didn't realize he shot 30% from 3 last year. Like it was
weird.
Last year was like, and this is kind of one of my like something that I'm gonna be watching very closely, just in terms of there was a lot of shooters last year who had like career low shooting years. Even like I
you think that was the adjustment back to fans mostly, or
it could be some of the fans, it could possibly be some of the ball. I'm not exactly sure. But like even Korkmaz in the COVID year, he shot 37%, and when no fans were in the arena, he shot 30% last year. Even like he shot 26% on corner threes. In the previous 3 years, he had shot 40%, 48%, and 41%. So like some of this is like, is it just like bad shooting luck, bad variance over a long stretch? We'll see. But there's a lot of shooters who, shooting samples you have to take over a long period of time. So we're going to see what's going on with Korkmaz. But as a wing, Depth guy. You can do worse in terms of shooters. Raz, we speak about him a lot. Isaiah Joe, I still think he's an NBA player somewhere in there. I think
I hope he can be something.
I
He
think
hasn't really gotten a chance yet.
yeah, like an extended run for sure. I would love to see another team snag him up and let him get a run on one of like the bad teams. He can shoot the crap out of the ball. Not something I'm really worried about. More about him getting stronger, which you would like to see. Hopefully, him going into his 23-year-old season. He's added some more additional strength, which might help. He's always kind of been a poor finisher around the rim. But he's a ridiculous like shooter off of movement, catch and shoot. He can do it all, and I think underrated. Just pick up from them. I think you did mention this earlier, Raz. The Trevelyan Queen pickup earlier. He's somebody who I think he kind of, and just to give Maury credit, because for better or for worse, whether you think it's a good idea or whether it's unimaginative to actually try and recreate those old Harden teams that were, I think you could say those were the second best team in the league for an extended stretch. So it'll be I think it's a pretty damn good team to try and recreate. It's not like he was trying to recreate like the '08 Bobcats or some shit, but
like the 13 or whatever.
I think he's somebody who I think if he gets an extended run, I think he's somebody who is actually going to be able to be a 3-and-D guy. I know like in college, he was one of the last guys I watched for that 2020 class, and I think he shot like maybe like 39-40%.
Do you guys think Springer will do anything?
Huh?
You guys think Springer will do anything?
I don't see the minutes for him this year. Like
I don't see how. Yeah.
I thought he was pretty good coming into the league, but I was a little worried because he always kind of had to use a hop step or a spin move and use his back, and he's kind of small for kind of his skill set in the NBA. So I was thinking it might be a couple years, and it's always tricky with guys like that because if you need 2 or 3 years to develop, unless they just see the writing on the wall with your talent, a lot of teams aren't going to be, patient for that. So I don't really know what to expect for him. But
he's behind Shake Milton as well, who we did not mention.
Yeah, we didn't even mention Milton, but he'll probably play a role. I actually think that he's better than Korkmaz.
Like when you're in distress, Shake Milton will do that. So I mean, Raz, final takes on this team, and let's get that official. Are you going over? Or are you going under 50.5 wins for the 2023 Philadelphia Sixers? Rocket.
Well, I mean, the fans of the show know that I am one with the James Harden fan club. I do think this team has the pieces. So we're gonna go with the over. Fuck it, this is the year. We're going with the over. We're hammering the over.
How about you, Jackson?
I'll co-sign that. I'm going with the over. I'll keep it tame and conservative. I'll say 53 wins.
Yeah, I just don't see like I said, I think injury is obviously the only way that this team really falters. Like even with I don't think Harden's gonna fall into like the bucket of like above average like starters. Like I still think
let me just say I called before last year, I said Harden was the best player in the league. That obviously wasn't the case. I think he'll make the All-NBA team this year for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're getting, I think, Embiid, top 5 player in the league, Harden, like as long as he's giving you that all-star production, there's enough depth and pieces on this team. In case anybody gets hurt, it kind of just helps the Joel Embiid MVP case. So yeah, I'm taking that over 50 as well. I think I just mean like we can end it here. We'll get you out of here in a sec, Jax. Just about teams that might possess the worst matchup for the Sixers teams. I don't see them really having any issues in the regular season. I think they're going to be able to probably skate towards 51 wins at least as a floor. This team could probably win upwards to 55 plus if they really click on all cylinders during the regular season. But I mean, Jackson and then Raz, we'll finish with you. But what do you think? Which team, as a team that's obviously going to be on that short list of contenders in the NBA, what team do you think matchup wise would be the worst matchup for them?
I think I don't know. I think the Bucks, their playoff offense is so nasty, but they just have so much size that unless Brook Lopez is a shell of himself, I think that they'll be a force for anyone kind of to deal with because they're an interesting team. They kind of have their top guys, and then after that, it's a lot of smaller guys like Grayson Allen. But the physicality that Giannis and Brook Lopez have and Drew Holiday, in a pinch, they put them on bigger players, and they kind of just live with what happens. I think that when you're a team that rebounds as well as they do, typically I think their foul rates have been pretty low, although I might need to double check that. I haven't looked at the cleaning the glass stuff in a while, but they're going to win on the defensive glass and kind of limit what you're able to pick up for second chance points. And I think that just looking at them like holistically, that they can kind of match Philadelphia's force and style, I guess. They're probably going to be a transition reliant team at times in the postseason, but I think that Giannis is a guy who's going to keep someone like a PJ Tucker in foul trouble, and they have two solid enough pick and roll ball handlers. I'd probably say Middleton's their best pick and roll player, at least as like a pull up shooter out of it. In Philadelphia, you probably want to drop Embiid. I think they're gonna usually drop Embiid and then switch everyone else just to help out with Harden's defensive tendencies, and PJ Tucker can guard across a few positions, and Tobias Harris is adequate. So I think they'll switch those guys up a lot, especially if it's with lineups with Thibault, Melton, etc. But facing a team like the Bucks, I think that they can kind of find some slippage there. The dark horse matchup for them would be the Cavaliers, just because I think that they're going to be top 3 to 5 defense, and they have the positional size. They can throw different guys at Embiid. Not that Evan Mobley could guard him for extended periods, but having that guy as a help defender or in a pinch, just having him to defend Embiid. I think Jared Allen doesn't get enough credit, though, for what he did last year defensively, at least in my opinion. But the big thing with Philadelphia is the ball containment. I think they're going to be asking a lot of PJ Tucker. What do Maxey and Harden have? I don't think they need to be great defenders, and I think Maxey's mostly fine for quicker players. But if there is a weakness with the team, I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, just jumping in, obviously, prior to events that have happened, you guys might have heard, the Celtics would have been one of those teams fully healthy that I would have, I wouldn't say is someone that they should be scared of, but they're not going to be a team you want to play. I like all the answers you gave, Jackson. Obviously, the Bucks, that team healthy is terrifying for any team in this league. But one dark horse team I would like to throw in there is a healthy Raptors team. I think
interesting.
A healthy Raptors team
they gave him hell last year.
Yeah, they gave him hell hurt. So, I mean, but obviously the Sixers team is revamped.
Yeah, they did with Van Vliet hurt. That was pretty impressive, to be honest. And who else was hurt? I think Anunoby was banged up. Barnes missed a game and a half, in the third, something like that.
So it's just like, between, the few, I mean, I guess now they have some vax people in their team, but, some of the anti-vaxxers on the Sixers hindered that team out in Toronto. And then you have just like the wingspan on that team and the switchability on defense. Like, defense isn't going to be the issue. Obviously, nobody can guard Embiid, but like they said, they gave him hell last year. And if you get your best offensive weapons back, is that a team you really want to see?
Yeah, like I said, finishing up. Actually looking at it right now, I think a lot of teams. I think they match up pretty well with a lot of teams in the East.
Wait, Sean, were you over or under?
I'm taking the over as well. For regular season. But yeah, just to wrap up, I think a lot of teams in the East are the true contenders. They match up with pretty well. I think just like the dynamic, guards that might be able to really take advantage of that backcourt that we mentioned. Kind of mostly are in the West. Like, I think that like the Hawks aren't a true contender to me. The Cavs are probably a year away from to me. But I think they even Garland might be able to really cook in a situation like that. But I think they match up pretty well with a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference at the top. So that's going to wrap us up for our 76ers preview. Let us know in the comments. Are you taking that over or are you taking that under for 50.5 wins for the 76ers? We're going to be back with more content soon. Jackson, appreciate you again. Go check out his pod. Follow him on Twitter. Obviously, Jackson Lloyd, NBA. NBA action with Jackson coming back soon, right?
We'll see. I've been really busy with real life stuff. I want to try and do more like live streams and maybe more not sporadic, but maybe not necessarily like a planned pod or not planned, scheduled pod like last season. Just do it when I can. Some weeks maybe twice. Other times I might have to go a certain period or stretch without doing it. Just kind of doing it more in my free time for fun this year. Just got to focus on some other things.
Life stuff happens to us. Oh man, but yes, sir, man. That has been. Got something else, right? Go ahead. You can wrap this up.
No. I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, life. We know how that goes, man. So, handle what you must, and when you're ready, the streets will be waiting for that content. But this is. Yeah, go ahead.
And we'll always, always a pleasure chopping it up with our guy Jackson. Make sure you guys do follow him. Great NBA feed for NBA talk, thoughts, opinionated stuff, all that stuff. But yes, sir, this is the Draft Season Podcast. Make sure you subscribe, run it up for all of us, and we will be back shortly with another installment of our 2023 NBA Team Preview Series. We out.